Welcome to the Awkward Sidelines sports show. My name's Brian Andrew. I'm here with my man Steven.
Going
How's it
on?
going? Yeah.
Brian
So
almost said awkward side hug.
I did.
Uh,
All right. So we're
it's a
gonna
way
get
to
into some
kick off the
topics
show.
today. We're gonna talk about the NBA load management debate. We're gonna talk about some NFL updates, including some fancy tips or maybe not tips. And we're going to get into some college football playoff debate, and we'll end it off with some games you should watch for and some predictions. How you doing today, Steven?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So let's start off with the NBA load management. Before we get into some opinions of other people, what are your predictions? Not predictions, but what are your opinions?
On NBA load management, huh?
Hmm.
It's a joke, is what it is.
You don't think you think players should not sit?
Okay, so you should only sit for one main reason is obviously your health. So if you're not 100%, then okay, that makes sense. Sit down. Don't risk your career for an injury.
Hmm.
Or two, if your team is already out of contention for playoffs or anything, worth playing for, the playoffs, the championship, whatever, then it makes sense. Okay, don't risk your health again for something you're not going to obtain this season.
Well, it's similar. So that's going back to what, like LeBron last season, and then going into like I don't know if you heard about this, but I just read about it this morning. Is Steph Curry is not going to play for the rest of the season?
Really? I thought no. I read an update on that, and there's confusion on his timetable, whether he's
Okay,
going to come back or not come back.
I originally heard it was 3 months, which would put him roughly around February, March ish.
Right.
Okay, so that's still with at least approximately 15 to 20 games left in the season. So I think it's a smart move. Like if your team's not going to make the playoffs, just
Right.
don't come back.
That makes
But
sense.
if he's capable to play, I guess maybe based on your original opinion on it, I know you said like the second part, but maybe he should play. So
Eh,
you need to sell out some of these tickets in the Chase Center, right?
Yeah. I mean,
If you're
I
not gonna,
guess, yeah, you're right. The Warriors this year aren't gonna really make it that far, and it might be good to preserve them because then you get because Klay Thompson's probably not gonna play this season, right?
probably, I don't think so.
So I mean, like maybe rest and get your guys back to 100% and ready for the next season.
Because I believe the Klay Thompson thing was entirely based on if they were going to make the playoffs.
Right, and obviously at this point, it doesn't look like they're going to be in contention for a playoff spot.
Because even Draymond Green has a lingering injury, I think, on his finger or something like that.
Nobody
So,
cares about Draymond Green.
but so the reason why this debate's been happening is because my boy Kawhi Leonard is he's been sitting out some games because he has a lingering knee injury from last season. But I guess it's not serious enough where he's going to miss games in general. But on back-to-back games, he misses the first one every time, or at least he's going to miss one game of back-to-backs. That's the plan.
So
So
I think, okay, with that, like we're at the beginning of the season, missing one game back to back. But if so, you're telling me if this week he has a back to back game, right?
which he
Let's say
did.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and then next week, he goes Thursday, Friday. So he's missing 2 games essentially in that 2 week period,
Yeah, probably.
right? Oh yeah, see that's.
So, and I think the main issue
I
the NBA has with it is
mhm.
he's missed nationally televised games. So
Right.
they're like, in a way, he's uh, making the league maybe lose money.
But see, and this is where my issue is because he pulled the same stunt in San Antonio.
Right.
Was he really hurt? Was he not hurt? He said he was hurt. Then the next year he comes to Toronto, plays like a freaking legend, wins the NBA Finals, and now he's coming. He goes to LA, he gets what he wants, and now he's pulling the same thing again.
And LeBron used to do it with Cleveland, and he did
Was
it
this
last year.
before he wanted out, or
Yeah, this is before. Like, this happened more so toward the end of the season where they kind of already locked down playoff spots. and then maybe every
Well,
few games
again, that makes sense.
he would miss. See, I look at it as like, let's put it in perspective like this. We already, unless there's a freak injury that happens, the Clippers are projected to at least make the playoffs. Is that correct?
Right.
The
Yeah, I think they're,
Lakers,
what are they, 2 or 3 right now
right?
in the Western
And
Conference?
so if it's kind of like a basketball game, but we're playing it across the season, you would sit your players if you've already got a blow. If you're getting blown out or you're going to blow out a team, you sometimes sit your player for the whole fourth quarter, or sometimes you limit their minutes, or you know what, like, and we've seen situations where, like, even in the NFL, some teams don't play week 17,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously they've already lost something down. But so
I would say
if
the
I
NFL is very different, though.
right, but going back to, I guess my point is, even though it's November, if you're already thinking you're going to make the playoffs and you have long-term goals in mind,
Mm-hmm.
then I don't see an issue with, as a certain form of strategy,
Mm-hmm.
to sit players.
Right. I
Like if
think one thing we forget is that the NBA is a business,
yeah,
right? And their number one, um, and I don't know, this is my opinion. Their number one goal is most likely revenue and not um, the longevity of a player's career,
mm-hmm,
but what they can bring to the money wise, what they can bring in at this point in time. And so Kawhi's hot right now, and so
mm-hmm,
that's why this is a big issue.
right,
And I mean, I think when looking at it now, it's not that like you said, you play or you sit your better players or whatever in the fourth quarter. And so I guess they're just preserving him as we used to do, where we would sit some of the better kids out at the beginning. That way they can just go ham in the third and fourth quarter.
right.
So,
And like, and let's put this in perspective. Let's just say something happens mid-season, the Clippers were to collapse, they
mm-hmm,
fall 5 to 10 games under 500 for whatever reason. Kawhi would probably play for the rest of the season. He wouldn't be sitting back-to-back games out. And if you're looking at it from the money perspective, it's kind of like, wouldn't the NBA, and I think that's why the NBA recently said, like, the Clippers are in compliance with the injury rules in terms of sitting your players out. There is a lingering knee injury that Kawhi apparently has.
right,
And even though he could go out and play a game, they think it's best for his health not to play back-to-back games.
right, and that's controversial. The NBA is obviously not going to say like, "Oh, like you're not really hurt,"
hmm
because
So,
that makes them look bad.
and I think where the NBA probably should have, like, yeah, you want to make money in the regular season games and stuff like that. And I know they're probably losing some money with the China stuff that's going on. But it,
China.
but if you look at it from this perspective, imagine how much money they're going to make if it is a Clippers Lakers Western Conference final, or even if they meet anywhere in the playoffs.
Right.
That's going to make them a lot more money than I feel like they're going to make just him playing on a Wednesday night on a back-to-back series.
But he's missing a pretty big game against the Bucks, so
Right, and
it's not
listen,
like against
I guess
uh, a
as a
bottom tier team.
as a Clippers fan from last season, and maybe there will be moments where I'm going to show bias. I'm just going to throw that out there. But like, the Clippers last year made the eighth seed or seventh seed, I believe seventh seed,
Mm-hmm.
and they took 2 games away from Golden State without Kawhi or Paul George. Now, yeah, they had Gallinari and some other pieces,
Mm-hmm.
but so with Kawhi sitting games, and I'm sure there's going to be moments, maybe in the back-to-backs when Paul George comes back, where Paul George will play one and Kawhi will play the other,
Mm-hmm.
kind of sit, and then they'll play together when it's not a back-to-back. But yeah, it's like, I actually, I'm not saying against the Bucks, because the Bucks are a really good team, but like, some of these average teams, I can see the Clippers competing without Kawhi for these middle of the pack regular season games, and I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue, even
Right.
though the Clippers are 0-2 without Kawhi so far.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Here's how you stop that. You give them an incentive.
yeah, maybe a financial incentive or
Mm-hmm. You play
whatever,
this many games in the season, you get a bonus.
right? And maybe there's contracts like that. Like, maybe like I wouldn't be surprised if when Derrick Rose was rehabbing from his knee and stuff like that, both his knees, I think it was. And maybe teams were like, "We'll give you this much money if you can play this many games for us." But I don't know
Yeah.
if we're allowed to do that. And so you want to get into some NFL updates?
So yeah, let's jump into the NFL updates. Breaking news: Pat Mahomes is going to start this weekend. So
How
I'm
excited are you?
very, I'm very fired up.
Matt Moore.
Especially
Matt Moore did pretty good though.
he did. Well, you know what? Andy Reid is a good quarterbacks coach, so um, I wasn't too surprised. But Matt Moore looked a lot better than I thought, especially against the Vikings. Um,
I watch a lot of college football, and there's sometimes like these backup quarterbacks that I've seen playing college ball that I get kind of excited watching him play in the NFL. And Matt Moore is one of them. Even though he's started plenty of games in the NFL, it's pretty cool to see him get some starts.
yeah, and to look good too,
hmm
doing it. He looked.
I, I always felt like he was capable. Obviously, he's not a starter, but I felt like he's a capable player.
Yeah. Well, I think at this point in his career, he just said like YOLO and just started chucking the ball.
Right?
At this point, it's like, well, they're not going to bench me, and I probably won't come back next year, or I'll retire. Because he was retired before the season, and so
That's true.
it's him having fun, and you always notice like the players that are out there just having fun, really like, they
Ryan
went through.
Ryan Fitzpatrick is one of them.
Ryan Fitzpatrick has fun on the football field,
He does.
and so wherever he goes, he finds a way to start.
hmm
And so, like, it's very entertaining to watch him.
So, do you feel like Mahomes is coming back too early?
I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna trust the because I think the medical staff obviously has a lot of pull in this decision. And I mean, the day of, obviously, it looked super bad when it
hmm
first happened, and they had to pop his kneecap back in place.
hmm
But he walked off the field on his own, and I was never on crutches, I don't think. Or if he was, I mean, he was able to walk. It was never like he was in a boot or anything. So,
Yeah, that's true.
or I never saw like a knee brace on his knee. So he's young. I'm sure he rehabbed right, and so I think he is 100% ready to go.
So there's always going to be,
Load
especially
management for him.
when we talk about the NFL, especially for us because we're huge fantasy football people, we're always going to sprinkle in some fantasy stuff. So how do you feel about Mahomes' fantasy projections this week? Coming off a knee injury, maybe some load management, maybe not running outside the pocket as much, or do you think Andy
Put
Reid
him
just going to let him do his thing?
put him down for two plus touchdowns.
They play Tennessee, which is a capable defense, but nothing too intimidating.
Their run defense is good, but
hmm
their pass defense is middle of the pack.
Right.
And the Chiefs don't have I wouldn't say a good, but they don't have a solid running offense.
Well,
And so,
sometimes you gotta just stick with one person. Like
yeah,
this
right?
committee, Andy Reid's never played with a committee before, and I think his selection of players, like if you want to have a third down back, it's weird because I feel like he has a 1 and 2 down back in a way, but
Yeah,
then he has like four different running backs playing the third down back,
right.
and it's getting like confusing, and for fantasy owners, it's really confusing.
It's
And
very frustrating, especially me being a Damian Williams fantasy owner.
mhm.
So I'm hoping that his performance last week at least bought him some more time here.
And for our next update is this is probably actually in a case too where it has more fantasy implications than it does actually NFL implications because the Cincinnati Bengals are 0-8. Their season's over. They're playing a
Right.
rookie quarterback who they drafted in the fourth round.
YOLO.
But AJ Green is out indefinitely with a swollen ankle. Do you think he's not going to play for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to come back. And I think it's a smart decision. I think he needs to preserve his health, especially being a contract year. I think, somebody will sign him because obviously, he's shown that when he's healthy, he's one of the I would say top five wide receivers in the league.
I agree.
So
And yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not gonna bet money on this, but I wouldn't be surprised if he maybe comes back for a week 16 or 17 showcase game
just
right
to
before
show that he's healthy.
just to show he's healthy. just to show he's still as good as he says he is. And then he'll go into, and we were talking about this before the show. I wouldn't be surprised if he does come back to the Bengals or the Bengals want him because he's a good veteran wide receiver piece. And if you're going to bring in maybe a first round rookie QB, it wouldn't be bad to have a veteran wide receiver. Like you could see how it's working with Murray in Arizona with Fitzgerald there.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's good to have a veteran wide receiver, but do you want to pay him as much as he's worth when you're in a rebuild? And well, I think that's for the Bengals to decide.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they hung on to Marvin Lewis for too long, so.
Right. And now they have a decent coach. I think offensively, it's just you got to put the right pieces behind him, and the defense can't put him in crappy parts of the field.
Right.
So, speaking of, I guess non-rebuild teams, or so maybe a player who's in a rebuild mode is Josh Gordon.
Josh
Uh,
Gordon.
Recently signed with the Seahawks. Do you think he's going to play Monday night?
Mm. So in the pre-show that we had, our little post or pre-production, I said yes, but after thinking about it and knowing that the Seahawks right now are not hurting like with injuries, I think they're gonna let him come in slowly, like assimilate slowly into the offense. So I think he takes this week off, and then I think he comes back next week.
I think I was reading somewhere, and I apologize for not giving credit to this person, but they're saying that he would actually dip into Metcalf's production in terms of the deep ball.
Right, because Josh Gordon is a deep receiver.
Right.
Same as Metcalf.
But you would think, since that 1-2 punch has been working, maybe Josh Gordon is actually going to be more of a
wide receiver 3.
Yeah, and I'm not saying slot receiver, but there might be.
Well, check this out. In 3 wide receiver formations, if they put Metcalf and Gordon on the outside, they can put Lockett back at
the slot where
he's really solid. I mean, he's already solid right now, but putting him back in the slot, like you're dangerous.
Right.
With a quarterback like Russell Wilson, it's hard to say that, but
no, but I feel like the Seahawks. I'm not a Seahawks fan, but they're actually very good at getting players that maybe other teams have given up on and make them somewhat productive. And this goes back to I remember Mike Williams, wide receiver, a few years ago. He went to the NFL draft way too early and couldn't, and he wasn't very productive for the Lions. Left the league for a while, came back, and the Seahawks actually made him into a very productive wide receiver where he thought he could make money somewhere else, and he ended up not being able to.
Yeah.
But Josh Gordon kind of seems like the same thing here, where this is actually maybe a good place for him to get his career back because he's actually got a lot of career left in him if he wants it.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see. As a Rams fan, it's a dangerous idea because that Seahawks offense just got a lot more dangerous. But at the same time, Josh Gordon could show up one week and not be there the next because suspension, it's something else, injury. He has not proven that he could play a full 16-game season.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I mean, like he goes from the Patriots, right? Very structured organization, like, you know, a lot is expected out of you, you know, do your job. And then you go into like, you know, Pete Carroll's Seahawks, where I think it's more of like a family atmosphere,
right.
like a giant family and everybody's got your back. And so I think it's I think the Patriots were a good starting point for him to get back, you know, after rehab and find his, you know, niche again, to see what's important in his life. Personally, and then now moving to the Seahawks, I think it's a good move for him mentally with a team. I think that's going to support him, you know, emotionally, especially Russell Wilson. And I my only thing about Russell Wilson is he's like, I don't know, he's just too. There's no such thing as perfect, but he seems like the perfect poster boy, and I think that's why I have a little.
See, my
distaste for him.
So my issue with Russell Wilson, because I had this debate with a friend once, and I was like, I always got kind of annoyed with the Russell Wilson style of football because, like, I don't know, like he's not a real he has all these passing yards, but they're not usually from like the pocket, and he's not staying in the pocket making these throws. He's running everywhere. And someone said, well, Aaron Rodgers does the same thing. But in my head, it's like it's different because Aaron Rodgers never, I feel like, takes his back to the play. Like he might do a spin move to get out of a sack, but he's looking downfield the entire time. Whereas sometimes you're watching Russell Wilson play and his back is turned to the play the entire time. And then all of a sudden he just turns around for a second, lobs it, and Lockett goes and finds it.
Yeah.
And it's just extremely frustrating because no DB should have to cover a player for like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's irritating to watch if you're a Seahawks fan, I'm sure you love it.
Yeah.
But it's irritating to watch.
Yeah.
Speaking of football, so this is a opinion I've had for a very long time is so we're at the point where the first college football playoff rankings came out. And they're interesting because you would expect Alabama and these teams to be number one, but actually, Ohio State is number one,
Mm-hmm.
LSU is number two,
Mm-hmm.
Alabama's number three, Penn State is number four, and Clemson's number five, with Georgia, Oregon, and Utah all with one losses following that. So there's no way both big by the end of the season, Big Ten teams are going to stay in the top four. So the way the format is designed is four teams make it. They have a game, and then like 10 days later, they have the championship game. They have the semifinals and the championship. But there's five power conferences: Pac-12, Big 12, Big 10, ACC, and SEC. And every year, there's a team from the ACC. It used to be Florida State a lot, but now it's Clemson. And there's always Alabama and some other SEC teams sneaking in or trying to sneak in. Only two Pac-12 teams have made it to the college football playoff since it started. That was Washington, who went 0-1, and Oregon, who won their semifinal game, and then lost in the championship. I believe it was the Mariota team.
Who did they lose to? Florida State,
I believe so.
right?
Because wasn't that the Jameis Winston Mariota thing? And then they went
Yeah.
to the draft the same year, and everyone was trying to figure out which one was better.
Right.
Um,
Jokes on everybody.
so it's interesting to me because as somebody who watches Pac-12 football a lot, and even I guess the Big 12, like it's kind of like one of those things where if Oklahoma doesn't make it, then the Big 12 is just not represented at all. And another situation I noticed recently, and so this you might watch this after these games happen, but LSU plays Alabama this week.
Mm-hmm.
One of these teams is going to get a loss. One of these teams is going to be knocked out of the top four. But what happens every year is these teams get knocked out temporarily, but then all the other teams knock each other out, and then another SEC team sneaks back in. And what happens is two power conferences always get left out of the playoff. I feel like every once in a while, Notre Dame will make it. Every once in a while, maybe we will have four different conferences in the playoff. But what happens a lot is two teams sometimes make it. One year, Ohio State didn't even win the Big Ten, and they got invited to the playoff
Yeah.
instead of the Big Ten champion.
Mm-hmm.
So the way March Madness works is if you win your conference, you get an automatic bid into March Madness, the NCAA tournament. And I feel like it should be the same way for football. So there's a total of 8 conferences, and I believe 5 of them are power. Maybe it's not 8 conferences, but I know there's 5 Power 5 ones. I believe each Power 5 should have an automatic bid, and then there should be 3 at-large bids. And it should just move, and they should have 8 teams instead of 4. And that's too much. They say that's too much football for college athletes. Then take a regular season game off, and they play 12 regular season games as it is right now. And to be honest, if you do 11 instead of 12, then you don't have any situations where there's 500 teams. You only have winning teams and losing teams.
Mm.
But that's something like, I don't know what your takes on it are, but
Well, you're a little more college football savvy than I am, um, but I think your take on it makes sense.
because like outside of Oklahoma and the 1 year where so what's going to happen this year is there's going to be a Pac-12 championship. Most likely, it's going to be Utah versus Oregon. One of those teams are going to lose, and even the team that wins still might not make the playoff.
Right.
And unless you're Oklahoma, it feels like anything west of the Mississippi has been left out of the playoff, and that's not fair because it should be a nationwide playoff. Why have the Pac-12 be a power conference if it's barely going to be invited?
Right.
So I understand some of these teams. Well, your case could be like, well, the conference has to get better, or the strength of schedule. But I've always seen like just because Alabama beats a 3-9 Ole Miss team or whatever, or they play FCS teams that are not even in the FBS division. But the Pac-12, like the top, like USC's never played an FCS team. Their first FCS team will be in 2021. So
And who's that against?
UC Davis.
Mm.
So I guess my take on it is they should create a system where if you win your conference and if your conference is a Power Five conference and you say it's a notch better than the other conferences, it should be invited.
Mm-hmm.
And then do three at-large teams, which could be a Notre Dame because they're an independent team. And then if you want another SEC team in there, you could put another SEC team in there.
Right.
But you shouldn't have two SEC teams over another conference. And it doesn't have to be the Pac-12. I feel like the Big 12 gets misrepresented too. And Minnesota plays Penn State this week. Minnesota might not even be in the top 10, I don't think, right now either. And they're undefeated. And
Yeah.
they're in a power conference. So, yep. Let me see
You
here.
can just claim yourself a national champion,
That's what
like
UCF
UCF.
did. Yeah.
You
And
know.
the way it used to work before the playoff would be you were invited to bowls. There was no playoff. There was not even a national championship.
Right.
The bowl itself was a national championship. And if you felt like you deserved to be a national champion because you won your bowl and somebody else won their bowl, there was a time where you could claim that you were also the national champion.
Mm.
So like 1 year USC won and 1 year LSU won their bowl, USC won their bowl, and both teams claimed to be national champions.
Mm.
So and then they were both recognized as national champions. They were called co-national champions, and then that's why they came up with the playoffs, saying that well, if they're both co-national champions, they should have played a game also on top of it to see who really is the national champion.
Right.
But
That makes sense. There's no ties. You don't tie for first.
no, and
Yeah.
because like what's going to happen in the SEC is between Alabama and LSU, most likely it doesn't matter who wins. One of them's going to go to the championship game and
Mm-hmm.
knock off the Eastern SEC team, most likely. And then, but the thing is, the other team, just because they didn't play, and all these other teams did play, and they might get knocked out, they might just sneak in because they had a bye week and during the championship week. And
What's
so,
so? What's your 1, 2, 3, 4 prediction for playoffs?
uh, as of this moment in the
No,
season,
no, no. Like at the end of it all.
I'm gonna say LSU.
Wait, can you do it in order? 1 to 4.
Yeah, number one will be LSU.
LSU. So you think LSU beats
Bama.
Alabama this
Yeah,
weekend?
I do.
Okay.
Then I'm going to say number two is going to be Ohio State. Number three is going to be Clemson. And number four is going to be Alabama.
Do you think that they are going to force Alabama in?
I feel like they'll try to figure out a way to get them back in. Yeah.
Because like, what would college playoffs be
Without
without
Alabama.
Alabama?
Right.
Right.
So, and I think LSU is going to play in the SEC championship. They're going to win their game. They're going to stay at number one. Ohio State's going to win the Big Ten championship. They're going to stay at number 2, which I'm one of those guys who actually roots for these top teams to lose. So even though I made these predictions, I'm going to hope they lose. And, and then Clemson, I think, is just going to ride its way back in the top 4. It's number 5 right now. And then Alabama, a one-loss Alabama team, is going to be the number 4 seed because they're going to say a one-loss Alabama team is better than a one-loss Oregon or Utah team. It's better than a. I think Georgia will be 2 losses by then. They're going to think
Mm-hmm.
they're going to say it's better than a one-loss Penn State team.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's going to be the case, because they always say, and I think Alabama's going to be considered better than a one-loss Oklahoma team as well. And they always say that they try to put the 4 best teams in the playoff, and people are going to say, well, Alabama is one of the best teams in the country. Why would you leave them out?
Right.
But I have a
And
feeling
you don't think Oklahoma might make it?
they're ranked number 9 right now. There's still plenty of football left, but I still think
Who did they lose to last week
they lost to
or the
Kansas
week
State.
before? Kansas State. Yeah.
So I think people are going to look at the 2 teams and go, well, Bama lost to the number 1 team in the country, while Oklahoma lost to Kansas State.
Right.
And they're going to say Alabama should be better. And I think Alabama losing to LSU, they're ranked number 3 right now. At worst, they might go back down to 6. They're not going to go all the way down to 10 like some of these other teams do.
Right.
So
That's a good take on that.
yeah,
You should send them a letter.
they probably want to read it because there'll be a lot of grammar errors. Well, a lot of grammar errors.
Send them a letter with a Dr. Pepper.
So every week or so when we do this, we're gonna have a game where we make a prediction on a game, and we're gonna keep the tallies. And I don't know when we're gonna end the tally or what the punishment of the loser or what the winner gets.
And it doesn't have to be a game. It can just be a hot take or.
Right. So, like, for example, the college football one I just did, that can have been it. But we're going to
I'm going to keep it simple for this first one.
For this first one. And we're talking about the Josh Gordon thing because I do feel like he kind of moves the ledger in terms of who the winner of this game will be. And so we're going to do the Seahawks versus the 49ers as our first predictions league matchup thing. And so who do you have, Steven?
This one was tough. Very tough. But as hot as the 49ers are right now, I'm going to have to stay with them. I'm going to take the 49ers at home.
Yeah. It's funny because I feel like Monday Night Football, we might get some Russell Wilson magic.
Mm-hmm.
I just think the 49ers defense is really good. And I feel like the 49ers offense could also be very slow, but still keep them in the game enough and be explosive enough, especially with their running game.
Mm-hmm.
I think the game's going to be closer than.
I think it's going to be what I have for it is 24-17 49ers.
I think it's going to be.
It's going to be a battle of defense.
I think it's going to be 21-10 49ers.
21-10. All right.
So I don't know. Maybe we could use the scores, or maybe add up the scores and see if whoever's closest. Mine would be 31 points, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's going to be like 13 or 14-10 for the majority of the game, and then there'll be a last fourth quarter like kind of garbage-ish touchdown to make it 21-10.
Garbage touchdown, huh?
So do you have a game for our viewers to watch this week?
Yeah. So I hope there's a lot of soccer fans out there. Canada versus the USA rematch. That's going to be in Canada, I believe, and it's a must-win for the United States. That has some Gold Cup implication here. Not only that, but I'm not a big fan of the USA soccer team. I know Brian is,
Yeah.
but obviously I'm a Mexico fan.
Obviously.
and they do pretty well all the time, except in the World Cup when they lose in the round of 16 every 4 years.
Well, Canada also has a 9-3 lead in their little group section on the United States. So if for the United States to even – because this is a Nations League matchup, which is still a very new concept, which we still don't 100% get.
Right.
But it's United States needs to catch up to Canada. So the best way to do that is to beat Canada.
Right. They
If you
have to
lose-
beat Canada. And then
So
I think they have one game after that.
I believe so.
So it's Canada, and then they play Cuba.
I think it is
I think
Cuba.
it's Cuba.
Cuba would probably be a win.
Should be a win, right?
So yeah, I think if they could, they can possibly catch up to Canada here, but I expect Canada to also beat Cuba, so we'll see.
Right, yeah.
Um,
Well, no, because Canada wouldn't play Cuba.
right, but I believe there's
There's
only
two.
three. I think there's only three teams in their little group thing, though. See, this is like I said, we don't get it either.
Yeah.
So because when I looked at the table right now, there's we're using the ESPN app. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see that. No, you can't. It's Canada, United States, and Cuba. There's only three teams in it, so I'm sure they all play each other. Oh, Cuba and Canada's already had 3 games, where United States has only had 2.
Oh, okay. There you go. That's what it is.
So I believe this will be Canada's 4th game against so that would be the United States, and then United States
Right,
plays
because there's
Cuba.
three leagues: League A, League B, League C,
Mm-hmm.
and then in each league, there's groups. And so, like, obviously, the best teams in the CONCACAF. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, I think so.
I always say CONCACAF, but
You might be right about that too.
the best teams, the best teams in Group A, or I'm sorry, in League A, obviously are in groups, and so, yeah, well, actually, I'm sorry, you said 9-3 in points, right?
Yeah. So if
Yeah,
they
so
beat,
if they beat Canada, then they get 3 points.
and then if they beat Cuba,
They should get another 3 points.
yeah, which would put them tied, and then it would probably be goal differential.
Which, let me see when the last game. So I know, like we were saying, on the 15th, USA. So next Friday, USA plays Canada, and then the following week, that's when they play Cuba, and they play them on the 19th, Tuesday. So, and I think that's it for Canada. They already played all their games.
Right.
So,
And then for my game to watch, which I think is a very interesting game, is Michigan State versus Seton Hall next Thursday. It's because
college basketball, by the way.
College basketball, men's college basketball, is Seton Hall is ranked 12th in the country, and Michigan State's ranked number 1 in the country. But Michigan State, which was pre-ranked to be number 1 in the country at the beginning of the season, they've already lost their first game to Kentucky, and now they're playing another ranked team right after it. So the number 1 team in the country that was ranked before the season start might start the season 0-2. So I think that's a very interesting game to watch for, because this could have March Madness implications just the second week into the season already. So I think those are the games to watch.
Now, who do you have in that one?
I think Michigan State will get it done.
Yeah, I think they pull it off.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was the awkward sideline. Oh,
you got to keep that in there. And you did get it right. You said the awkward sideline.
I know, but it's like my body wanted to, like my mouth wanted to say, like, hug. That was that was the awkward sideline sports show.
Boom. Oh.